I want to show you something that changed how I run my sales team. So I had a rep finish a 90-minute meeting with a prospect, and he came back and he told me that the deal fell apart because of price. Here's the thing. I pulled the transcript and I ran it through AI. Price didn't come up until minute 38. The deal was actually dead at minute 12, and he had no idea. Not because he was lying or anything, but because he genuinely believed his own story about what was happening on the call. That's the problem with coaching your team based on what they tell you. You're not coaching what actually happened, you're coaching the version of it that they actually remember. So here's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to walk you through the exact system that I built to see what actually happens on each of our sales calls. I'm going to show you the architecture of a winning script, the AI skill that grades the calls against it, and the output that it produces. And then I'm going to give you the exact prompt to build your own version from scratch using the transcript of this video as your raw material. By the end of this, you will have a framework for building a gated sales script, a scoring rubric, and an AI system that coaches your team on data instead of memory. Let's get into it. Quick context before I show you the system. I run a business coaching firm. We run long consultative sales meetings, diagnostics, where a rep will spend 60 to 90 minutes with a business owner, where they walk through their numbers and either close them into a coaching program or doesn't. It's high stakes, high variability, and until recently, high dependence on whatever the rep told me happened while he was in the room. If you run a sales team of any size, even just one person, and you've ever coached a rep based on their version of a call, this is for you. The system I'm going to show you works for any sales process. You don't need my scripts. You don't need my call types. You need the framework. That is what this video is. Now, I want to give credit before I show you the build. I have a mentor, someone who's trained hundreds of salespeople and grew a business from 400,000 to 400 million by getting obsessive, genuinely obsessive about what actually happens inside of a sales conversation. He told me something that I keep coming back to. Most sales are lost at the front of the meeting. Not the pitch, not the close, the front, because the rep never established that the prospect had a need. The sales rep assumed it. They skipped past it. They were so focused on what they were going to say next that they never stopped to make the prospect say the need out loud in their own words. He also said this: professionals use a script not because they don't know what to say. They use a script because it frees them up to listen. When you're not thinking about your next line, you can actually hear what the prospect is telling you. I heard both of those things. I built a system around them. And I'm going to show you exactly how. Now, before I show you the build, I want to show you how I run it, because this part matters and most people tend to skip it. So this folder right here, this is where everything lives. Call transcripts, analysis documents, scripts, coaching notes, all of it here on my local machine. And I run all of this through Claude CoWork. The reason I run this through Claude CoWork instead of just pasting it into a chat window is straightforward. When you use CoWork and point it at a local folder, the files stay on your computer. They're not being uploaded to Anthropic servers. For a coaching business where prospects share some real information, which could include their revenue or margins and personal goals, things of this nature, on these calls, that distinction of security matters. Now, it's not a perfect solution. I still blur out the names and identifying details and the outputs before I share anything, but keeping the raw files local is a layer of protection I can explain to my team and my clients in a very simple sentence. Everything you're going to see today runs from this folder through CoWork, and the output lands right back here. That's the setup. So here's how the folder is organized. For this video today, I have demo files that I will be sharing with you here on the screen. I've got the skill that is a folder that breaks down exactly how everything is structured and how the AI needs to go about analyzing each of the calls. I have each of our call types in separate folders, from our sales diagnostic meetings to just simple discovery call meetings, some of our prep call meetings, which we call a coach on deck, and even some of our podcast things are listed here in a folder. Within each of these folders, we have subfolders. So if I go to discovery call meetings as an example, you can see an analysis that's been done. There's a folder for the default script template. So once I have the actual script that's being used, or if that's ever needed to be replaced and swapped out, it lives here in this subfolder. And then any transcripts that we may have will come through and be added to this specific folder. But you can see that each call has its own subfolder, its own script template, its own scoring rubric. The analysis documents, the outputs of the system produces each call can be put into the folders, and if it's an aggregate one, it gets placed back into the main folder here. Additionally, we have the scripts folder, and this is the folder where I created everything by dumping old things, adding in new things, and crafting a new version that allows us to be much more successful. So the thing that really matters is everything the AI needs lives in this folder. I don't have to explain the context every single time I open a session. I open Claude CoWork, I point it at the folder, I give it a little bit of instruction. That's the whole setup, and I allow it to go to work. So before I show you this skill or the output, I need to walk you through the framework underneath it. Because if you don't understand why this script is built the way that it is, you can't build one for your own process. And that's the whole point of this video. There are 6 basic principles. These are the ones that actually determine whether a sales conversation closes or it doesn't. Every one of them is baked into the script architecture and the scoring rubric that we use. So principle 1, gates, not sections. Most sales scripts are organized like an agenda: introduction, discovery, presentation, close. You move through them in order and kind of check them off. A gated script, though, is a bit different. A gate is behavior, a behavioral condition that must be met before you're allowed to advance to the next section. Not a topic that you covered, not a slide that you showed, something that the prospect did, something that they said, they owned, or they quantified. That tells you the foundation is there to be allowed to move forward. The gate isn't, did we talk about their challenges? The gate is, did they verbalize a specific challenge in their own words and agree that it's real? Those are completely different things. One is a topic, the other is a behavior. If the prospect hasn't hit the gate condition, you don't get to advance. You stay in that section and keep working until they do. You've got to earn the right to move to the next step. And if they don't, or you don't make it to the next step, you may just acknowledge that the meeting isn't a right fit and you stop. Gates are what turn a script from a presentation into a conversation with a spine. Which brings us to principle 2. The prospect must verbalize the need. You can't do it for them. This is the most counterintuitive thing in the whole system. It's not enough for you to know what the prospect's problem is. It's not enough to reflect back on it to them. The prospect has to say it in their own words before they will ever act on it. The psychology behind this is pretty straightforward. People don't commit to solving problems they haven't owned out loud. The moment they say it themselves is the moment it becomes real for them. Before that, it's just something you think about their business. So the gate at the end of your discovery section is not, did I understand their problem? It's, did they state it specifically in their own words? And did you hear it? If they haven't said it, you haven't done discovery. You've had a conversation. Which brings us to principle 3. Wait by what actually predicts close rate, not by what feels important. When you build a scoring rubric, every item gets a weight. The weight represents how much that behavior actually determines whether the deal is going to close. Most people weight the pitch pretty heavily because it feels like the main event. It really isn't. The pitch is the middle. It flexes. A mediocre pitch with a really strong discovery and a clean close tends to outperform a brilliant pitch with weak discovery almost every single time. The highest weighted items in any sales process are always the same two things: the moment the prospect quantifies what the problem is costing them, and the moment the rep asks for the sale. Everything else supports these two moments. Weight your rubric accordingly. So principle 4, talk time is a leading indicator, not a vanity metric. The target in a discovery or diagnostic type of a meeting is simple. The rep themselves talk less than 50% of the time. That's not arbitrary. High rep talk time is the single most reliable signal that discovery didn't happen. When a rep is talking more than the prospect, they're presenting. They're not uncovering. And you cannot close on information you never surfaced. The talk time number from a transcript tells you in 3 seconds whether the conditions for a close even existed on that call. You don't need to listen to the whole recording first. Under 50%, you've got a chance. Over 50%, go find where they stopped asking questions. So principle 5, the money anchor changes the entire close. So here's the mistake that I see consistently. The rep does great discovery, builds real rapport, walks through strong presentations, and then introduces price as a surprise at the end. The prospect flinches, and the rep interprets that as a price objection. It usually isn't. What happened is the prospect had no reference point. They heard a monthly number or a final sales number with nothing to anchor it against except their gut reaction. The money anchor fixes this. Before you present anything, before the pitch, before the programs, before you say a single number at all, you ask the prospect directly about their investment appetite. Something like this: are you the kind of owner who invests meaningfully in solving a problem like this, or are you just looking to keep the investment as small as possible to start? That question does 3 things. It surfaces their real willingness before you're ever committing to a number. It anchors the conversation on the value of growth, not the cost. And it tells you where on the downsell ladder to start. Ask it early. Don't flinch. Don't anchor low for them before they've had a chance to tell you where they are. Which brings us now to principle 6. Objections at the close are almost always symptoms of something missed earlier in the conversation. This one changed how I coach entirely. When a rep tells me that a deal died on price, my first question isn't, how did you handle the price objection? My first question is, did they quantify the cost of inaction during gate 2? Price objections at the close are almost always downstream of a missing cost of inaction conversation upstream. The prospect never put any real dollar figures on what staying stuck is costing them per year. So when they hear a monthly fee or a final number, they have no anchor. The fee feels expensive because the problem never felt expensive to them in the first place. The fix isn't a better rebuttal. The fix is earlier in that call. This is why the scoring rubric tracks objection frequency by bucket over time. Not to measure how well the rep handles objections, to trace them back to the upstream miss and fix that part of the process in that moment. So 6 principles: gates, need verbalization, weight by close rate, talk time as a leading indicator, the money anchor, and objections as symptoms. When you pull the transcript from this video and use it to build your own script, these 6 principles are what you're going to be building from. Not my call types, my specific gates, the architecture underneath them. So let me show you what's inside the brain. This file is called a skill. Think of it as the instruction set that tells the AI exactly what job that it's doing, what standard it's grading against, and what to produce when it's done. So within this folder, you've got reference files, you've got scripts, you've got the actual skill MD or markdown file that has all of the instructions. With all of this together, it knows the call types: discovery, the first real conversation with a prospect; build rapport, qualify them, get them to name and own a need, book them into the next step before you hang up, things of this nature. It has reference on our coach on deck or our prep call, a 15 to 25 minute call before that final meeting. Lock the right people in the room, reframe the problem, get a commitment that a decision will be made for the next meeting, things that are standard for that particular meeting. And then, of course, the actual sales meeting, the sales diagnostic, the close meeting. This is where the money ask happens. 60 to 90 minutes, 5 gates. You don't leave without a decision. All of these things in here for the AI to be able to read and understand each time it goes to do the grading. Each call type has its own operating script. Each one has its own scoring rubric. AI knows all 4. The skill.md file has the instructions, what to do first, how to parse the transcripts, what to look for, which call it's looking at, and then starts to produce the outputs based on the inputs. And all of it ties back to these reference files that live right here in the same folder. Rubrics, metric definitions, how to count a need verbalization, what counts as a tie down, how to structure the output documents, all of it. This is not a general AI that knows something about sales. This is an AI that knows my sales process, my scripts, my scoring standards, and my output requirements. That's the difference between a chatbot and using something like this as an execution layer. So next, let me show you one of the rubrics so you can see the architecture actually being applied. Every call starts with 4 behavioral metrics. Talk time, the rep's share of spoken words, targeting that under 50%, which you can see here on the spreadsheet. Discovery questions asked, target of 8 or more. Times the prospect verbalized a need, target 3 or 4. Yes, and tie down count, target 5 or more. These are all leading indicators. They tell you whether the conditions for a close even existed on this call before you even look at a single script. Every item in a meeting is scored and weighted. You got things like cost of inaction that's quantified. That's a gate. The prospect puts a real dollar figure on what staying stuck cost them per year. Highest weighted item in the entire meeting. Money anchor before the pitch. Investment appetite asked before a single program is presented. Those 2 items are the ones reps avoid the most. Too direct, too uncomfortable, too early. And they're the ones that determine whether the close has a foundation or not. So the basic summary and rubric that you can see here is it provides rep, prospect. What was the outcome? What actually happened? Compliance on the script, a rating based on all of the numbers, their talk time percentage. Was the money asked? What was the top strength of this call? What was the top gap? And where's the status? Tab 2 gives us the ability to see what's the objection log. What are the objections that we are seeing most often? And what was it said verbatim? Objection summary, starting to pull these into particular buckets. And then a rep roll-up. So as you roll all of these things up with a multiple rep sales team, you can start seeing their scores across over time. So I want to share a rule that I no longer bend on. If a rep gets the end of a diagnostic sales meeting and never asks for a sale at any level, even $99, that's a critical fail. It doesn't matter how good the rapport was, doesn't matter how thorough the discovery was. You cannot close a deal if you never ask for it. That flag goes at the top of the analysis, and it's the first thing that anyone reads. So now here's what comes out the other side. This is an example of a real call diagnosis. I have everything anonymized in here, but I want to show you kind of what's in this particular document. This is the analysis that we would get. Here in the document, you have the first, at the very beginning, critical flag. What is the major thing? And on this particular call, the money ask. It was a critical fail. You know, they recommended something, but they didn't actually ask the prospect to take the next step. This is the key thing for us to take a look at. We've got the snapshot that gives us the rep, the business, all the details of this particular one, and even a deal odds. Oh, we got a 50% chance of this one closing, even on follow-up. Metrics. So this, again, correlates back to the full-on Excel dashboard that I shared earlier, but this would be specific to the call. So we can take a look at individual calls, see what was their talk time, discovery questions, was a need verbalized, and how frequently was that? Did they feel that they were understood? So this is a really important one. When you're in a sales conversation, One of the best indicators of whether a sale is going to happen is, does the prospect feel that you as the sales rep understand their needs? So we'll track it. How close did we get on that mark? If we got really, really high on that number, the chance of making the sale, as long as we make the money ask, is relatively high. You've got script compliance scorecarding, kind of going through each of the gates. Did we hit them? Did we miss them? Did we only get part of the way through them? And then it gives an analysis of what worked. Where did we miss the boat? What were the objections that we got? What are the follow-up action items to do? And then for the rep-facing summary, what are the things we need to talk about as a team to help this individual become even better at their job? So as we look at this script compliance piece, I want to pull out a couple things that as a sales manager, you would be taking a look at. Gate 1, frame and authority. Passed it. Amazing. Gate 2, need discovery. 58%. He ran the scorecard. He built the 5 ways math for our sales process on their real numbers. He created genuine aha moment. He just never quantified the cost of inaction. So weight 9, 0. Gate 3, the recap, 25%. He never played it back in their own words and got the explicit yes before moving on to the solution. The gate condition wasn't met. He advanced anyway. Gate number 5, the close, 24%. Recommended the program, walked through the options, never asked them to actually start. With this information in hand, this is the difference between a manager who reports and a coach who develops. It gives you the tools to have a great conversation to guide and move your team forward. So let's take this to the next step. And here we've got the sales coaching report. So this is a version of the analysis that is best sent to the actual rep. This gives them the big picture. How did things go? What are you really, really good at? It's important to share the things that we want them to keep doing. In this example, you're excellent at the front of the sale. A discovery scored 71% here. Green, on prep, everything. Like it was fantastic, right? And then we get into the areas for improvement. Hey, there's 2 patterns that are capping your close. And the data is now hard to argue with. First and foremost, you talk too much. We've got the talk time measured here. You never put a number on the pain. And something like good news. Both of these are skills. It's not a personality thing. They're all trainable. We can work through these things together. Goes down, it shows, these couple calls that we had done an analysis on. It shows for the businesses and where they were at, what to do before the next follow-up, what you did well, where to level up. All these things producing an opportunity to have a really good conversation with your team to empower them to be better. This is like my favorite thing when it comes to AI. It allows us to help our team level up their skills, to become better, not necessarily replace them. I am not replacing my sales rep with AI, but I am empowering them with AI tools that we wish existed 10 years ago. How do I help you get a tighter feedback loop to understand what went well, what didn't go well, so you can improve? So since tightening against a lot of this, since we rebuilt the script based on what this data showed us and gave our team this specific coaching, this rep has closed every opportunity that he's had this week. Not because I told him to just go sell better, but because the data showed us exactly where the process was broken and we fixed the specific things that mattered. So here's what I want you to actually understand about what you just saw. Your rep is not lying to you when they say that it was a price objection. He experienced the whole call. He felt good about the pitch. When they said no, the last thing on the table was money. So that's the story that stuck. The AI here doesn't have that filter. It reads the whole call without the emotional residue of being in the room. It finds where the call actually broke down, not where the rep remembers it breaking down. The script principle applies here too. The rep using a script isn't reading lines. They're freed up to actually listen because they're not thinking about what to say next. The AI does the same thing on the back end. It reads what actually happened because it has no stake in the outcome. This is not a surveillance tool. It's not about catching your team doing things wrong. It's about showing them what they genuinely cannot see themselves. Every rep who has gone through this process has said the same thing. I didn't realize I was doing that. That's the moment coaching actually works. Now, here's what I want you to do with everything that you just watched. If you pull the transcript of this video, and I'll tell you exactly how here in a second, you have an entire framework sitting in a document. The 6 architecture principles, the call types, the scoring logic, the behavioral metrics, the output structure, all of it. Here's the exact sequence to turn that into your very own system. Step 1, start a project folder. If you're using Claude CoWork, like I have set up here, make it local. Drop in the video transcript. If you have a sales script, even a rough one, even a page of bullet points, drop that in too, and then connect right here to that specific folder. Step 2 is I want you to give it this prompt. And I'm going to read it slowly so it ends up cleanly in the transcript. I want to build a call analysis skill for my sales team. Attached is a transcript from a YouTube video that walks through a complete framework for building a gated sales script and an AI-powered call analysis system, including the 6 architecture principles, scoring rubrics, behavioral metrics, and output formats. Using that transcript as your foundation, do the following. 1. Map my sales process to the 6 architecture principles from the transcript. Gates and gate conditions, need verbalization, weighted by close rate, talk time as a leading indicator, the money anchor, and objections as upstream symptoms. 2. Using my sales script and the framework from the transcript, draft a gated scoring rubric for my call type. Define a gate condition for each section, a specific thing the prospect must say or do before the rep advances. Weight the items by what actually drives close rate. Discovery and close sections carry the most weight. 3. Write a skill.md file that instructs an AI agent to analyze my sales calls against this rubric. Compute the key behavioral metrics, including talk time and need verbalization count. Run a critical money ask check, and produce a coaching report I can hand directly to my rep. Build it as a working first draft I can iterate on. That's it. That's the prompt. What comes back is this first draft of your own system, your process, your gates, your metrics, your outputs. You iterate from there. Run it against a real call. See what it's missing. Tighten the gate conditions, then run it again. 3 calls. That's how long it took me to get from rough draft to something that I can actually trust. Now, how to pull the transcript. On desktop, 3 dots under this video, click the show transcript, copy the full text, paste it into a document, and drop it into the folder. On mobile, same 3 dots, same option. The prompt I just read is in the transcript, and it's in the description of this video. You don't have to write it yourself. That's the whole point of building this video the way that I did. If you want to see how I built this skill from scratch, the first version, the iteration, how the rubric changed after the first 3 calls, then you need to subscribe. That's going to be one of the next videos. And if you're building something like this and you want the full framework behind it, the systems, the behavior gap, the AI execution layer, it's going to be in the book. Waiting list is at tannerobrien.com/book. That's it. Go build it. And for those that have stuck with me and continue to stick with me, as always, let's go build some amazing businesses together.